The peaceful galaxy lay undisturbed for centuries, each star system governed by powerful factions that had long since learned the art of balance through diplomacy and force. Yet in the uncharted reaches of space, something was about to change. No one could have foreseen the sudden rift in the fabric of reality that appeared one quiet evening in the distant sector of the Vortex Nebula. It shimmered like a tear in the universe, pulsing with strange energy and drawing the attention of nearby ships. As the anomaly grew larger, its influence expanded, warping space itself for days. No one dared approach the rift until a lone scout ship ventured too close and vanished without a trace. The disappearance sparked immediate concern among the galactic powers. The first to respond was the Rylith Dominion, an empire of cold, calculating warriors known for their command of the void. They dispatched a fleet of warships to investigate, fearing that this anomaly might be a new weapon or some form of enemy invasion. They gathered the best minds in the galaxy to analyze the strange occurrence, but no one could explain its sudden appearance or understand its purpose. Then the unimaginable happened. As the Rylith fleet drew near, the anomaly began to pulse with a violent energy. The ships fell silent as a massive silhouette emerged from the rift. A human-made battleship. Its form was sleek yet imposing, its hull gleaming with an unknown metal that absorbed the starlight. It was enormous beyond anything the Rylith had ever seen, and as it slowly drifted into view, it emitted a low hum that vibrated through the fabric of space. The fleet froze in disbelief as the human battleship turned its gaze toward them. Its energy readings were off the scale, far surpassing anything the Rylith had ever encountered. Even their most advanced technologies seemed to be struggling to comprehend its presence in the void. The Rylith commanders exchanged urgent whispers. The crew of their flagship couldn't fathom what they were seeing. Could this be a relic from an ancient civilization, perhaps long forgotten? Was this some kind of human artifact from a time before their recorded history? Was it a weapon, a ship designed for war, or something more? But before they could answer their own questions, something far more startling occurred. The human battleship activated a strange signal, and without warning, the entire fleet of Rylith ships was rendered completely inert. Their weapons powered down, their shields deactivated, their engines lost all momentum. They were completely paralyzed. The human ship had done it without firing a single shot, without any obvious means of attack. It was as if they had been frozen in time. The silence that followed was deafening. The crew of the flagship sat in stunned silence. Their leaders exchanged nervous glances, not knowing whether they had just witnessed the arrival of an ally or a foe capable of wiping them from existence. The human ship hovered in place, and then from the void came a single message transmitted across all channels of communication across the galaxy. The message was simple and chilling. We are the descendants of humanity. We come not to negotiate, we come to claim what is ours. The galaxy had just been put on notice. The long-lost humans had returned, and the rules of power would never be the same again. The message from the Endeavor echoed through every corner of the galaxy, reverberating in the minds of every galactic leader, every strategist, and every soldier who had once felt safe under the established power structures across countless systems. Panic set in among the most powerful factions. The Rylith Dominion took immediate action, recalling their fleet as fast as they could muster to safety. The Dominion's high command convened within hours of receiving the broadcast, their top minds trying to decode the meaning behind the simple, chilling words. The Urak Hegemony and the Veltraxi Confederacy were similarly rattled. The Nexians, a race of advanced artificial beings, were swift to analyze the situation and form plans for their own survival. But what united them all was the same cold realization. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations had underestimated the power of a species they thought long lost. The humans were back, and they were no longer the primitives they had once been. The galactic powers now faced a profound dilemma. One faction would not simply confront the humans with weapons, not yet knowing the full extent of their capabilities. No one knew how they had reemerged, how their technology had advanced to such a level, or even if they had allies in the void. The Rylith Dominion debated sending an envoy to speak with the human ship, but fear prevented them from making the first move. Instead, they sent the largest and most technologically advanced fleet to the coordinates Where the Endeavour had been seen, the ship had not moved from its position in the void. It sat silently like a predator watching its prey. As the fleet arrived, they began to encircle the human ship, waiting for a sign of aggression. The human ship made no response, and so the Rylith commanders grew bolder with each passing minute. They believed that fear was the only weapon the humans could wield and decided to confront them directly. Under the threat of firepower, they would demand answers and make clear the strength of their military. Might a single Rylith warship broadcasted a message to the human ship, their captain's voice booming across the stars in a harsh tone: "Do not mistake us. We will not allow you to claim what is ours. Surrender your vessel or face the consequences." But just as the words left his mouth, the Endeavour responded with a single action. It fired a pulse that washed over the entire Rylith fleet. Instantly, every ship fell into complete disarray. Weapons systems disabled, engines dead, and the water shields flickering out of existence. The sudden shock of the attack sent ripples across the galaxy, and the Rylith commanders could only watch helplessly as their ships were rendered useless without a single shot fired. No explosion, no warning, just pure helplessness. The human ship showed no signs of moving or attacking further, yet the damage was clear. The Endeavour had proven its power far beyond what any race had imagined, and it did so effortlessly. In that single instant, the fear in the hearts of the galaxy's leaders grew more profound than ever before. The humans had demonstrated a technology that transcended every known form of weaponry or defense in the galaxy. It was as if they had unlocked a form of energy manipulation far beyond the capabilities of any known race. The message was clear once again: humanity was not a race to be trifled with, and the galactic powers were left with no answers, only questions and a deep uncertainty about what they had just unleashed into the galaxy. In the wake of the Endeavour's display of power, the galaxy stood on the edge of a precipice. The message had been delivered clearly and without ambiguity, but its implications had yet to fully settle in. For days, the leaders of the galaxy's most powerful factions deliberated in frantic meetings, convening emergency councils, and formulating desperate plans. The Rylith Dominion, once the undisputed masters of war in the sector, now found themselves paralyzed. They had seen firsthand the magnitude of the human threat, and nothing in their extensive arsenal could contend with the Endeavour's seemingly limitless power. The Dominion's supreme command structure, filled with seasoned warriors, was now consumed by fear and uncertainty. There were no guarantees that a second attack wouldn't come, nor any understanding of what the humans wanted. Across the galaxy, similar responses rippled. The Veltraxi Confederacy, a loose alliance of humanoid species, found themselves at a crossroads. Their once proud fleets had swept across countless star systems, conquering and subjugating, yet now they were left utterly unsure of how to proceed. Their leaders met in the towering citadels of the Central Council, debating whether to attempt diplomacy or prepare for a war they couldn't understand. Some argued that the humans must be approached with peace, their intentions still a mystery. Others, particularly the hardliners, believed the time for negotiation had passed. The galaxy must respond with force before it was too late. But the one faction that did not hesitate was the Nexians, the galaxy's most advanced race of synthetic beings. Created long before the fall of humanity, the Nexians had evolved beyond their creators in ways that left many races in awe and fear. They had studied the humans in their history archives, piecing together the legends of a species that had once ruled over a vast empire, an empire that had mysteriously disappeared, only to now reappear. For the Nexians, there was no uncertainty. They knew the only way to deal with the humans was to learn everything about them, to understand the root of their resurgence. In their cold, calculating minds, there was no room for diplomacy if it was a trap, but neither could they allow the Endeavour to remain an enigma. The Nexians launched a mission to infiltrate the human ship. Their most advanced fleet, silent and cloaked, approached the Endeavour under the cover of a nearby asteroid field. Their goal was not to confront, but to observe, to gather data. But as they moved closer to the human battleship, something unexpected occurred. The Endeavour reacted. In a fraction of a second, the Nexian fleet found their communications scrambled, their cloaking devices undone. Their engines slowed to a crawl. The Endeavor hadn't even fired a shot. It had simply noticed them. The Nexians, masters of stealth and subterfuge, found themselves utterly exposed and incapable of hiding. In the cold silence of space, the human ship transmitted a brief message to the Nexian fleet. "We know you're here. Leave now, or we will make you." The Nexians retreated, but the damage had been done. Their entire fleet was shaken. For the first time in their existence, they had encountered an enemy that not only matched their own capabilities, but far surpassed them in every conceivable way. This wasn't a fluke. This wasn't a mere threat. The humans were back, and they were not just a power to be reckoned with. They were an existential threat to every empire in the galaxy. Back on the other side of the galaxy, the Rylith Dominion, in a rare moment of unity, decided to act. They would not be the next to retreat, and they would not let the galaxy fall under the control of a species they barely understood. But the first move had already been made. The Endeavor had declared its presence, its intentions clear. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted. The old order was crumbling, and in its place, something far more dangerous was rising. The news of the Endeavor's power spread like wildfire across the galaxy, its shockwaves reaching even the farthest corners where once isolated systems now found themselves tangled in the web of a new and terrifying reality. Factions that had once stood as towering giants in the stars, impervious to threats, were now scrambling to understand humanity's reappearance. The myth of humanity's rise and fall had turned into a living nightmare. What had once been dismissed as a myth had proven all too real, and the galaxy's powers found themselves unprepared for what was to come. Amid the panic and confusion, the Endeavor broadcasted again. This time, it was not just a single message but an entire history, humanity's history, displayed for all to see. For hours, the human ship poured forth the story of Earth, a planet that had once been a small, insignificant speck in a galaxy filled with grand empires and endless worlds. The humans had risen from their humble origins to conquer the stars, stretching their influence over vast swaths of the galaxy. But then, in a catastrophe that had left their empire shattered, humanity vanished. Their worlds fell silent. Their ships went dark. Their history became little more than a story told by the ancient races who had once feared them. The message revealed a devastating truth. The fall of humanity had not been a mere accident, but a deliberate collapse, an extinction event that wiped out their greatest cities and brought their civilization to its knees. Yet what had followed was even more unsettling. The humans had not disappeared into the void, but had survived in secret, rebuilding their technology, regaining their strength, and learning from the mistakes of their past. They had waited in the darkness of space, hidden among the forgotten edges of the galaxy, until they were ready to return. And now, they had returned. The broadcast was more than just a history lesson. It was a declaration. The humans had not come to negotiate or plead for their place in the stars. They had not come to learn how to coexist with the other species. No, they had come to claim what was theirs. The Endeavor made clear that the galaxy, once divided among alien factions, now faced the reawakening of a once great empire. The time for old power structures was over. The humans were back, and they would not be ignored. Among the galaxy's leaders, responses varied. Some were in denial, refusing to believe that humanity could truly have returned so fully formed and so powerful. Others saw the message for what it was. A challenge, one that would not be answered by simple diplomacy or empty threats. Among the most powerful, the fear was palpable. The Nexians, the cold, calculating artificial intelligences who had once studied humanity's rise, now began to rethink everything they knew about the organic species. They had assumed humanity was nothing more than a relic, a long-dead empire that had collapsed under its own weight. Yet here they were, not only alive but stronger than ever. The Nexians began to shift their focus, not on finding ways to eliminate this new threat, but on understanding it. They knew they could not afford to underestimate humanity again. The Orc hegemony, the proud reptilian empire that had dominated the galaxy for millennia, responded with a series of fiery speeches. They declared that they would not bow to humanity, that they would meet the Endeavor head-on in battle. Yet even their bravado couldn't mask the growing fear within their ranks. The hegemony had seen the power of the Endeavor firsthand. The fear that had gripped the other factions began to spread even through their own military ranks. No one knew exactly how to fight what they didn't understand. But perhaps the most urgent response came from the Rylith Dominion, the first to face humanity in combat. They were not naive enough to challenge humanity outright again. Instead, they sought to find any advantage they could, any information that might give them the edge. They ordered a deep investigation into human history, into the lost technologies humanity had used to dominate the galaxy before their fall. What had been dismissed as ancient relics were now seen as potential keys to victory. The Dominion began to prepare for the possibility of a full-scale war, one that could reshape the galaxy. All the while, the Endeavor remained motionless in the dark void, sending out periodic broadcasts, not to provoke further, but to remind the galaxy of its presence. And with each broadcast, the understanding grew clearer. Humanity was no longer the underdog. They were the hunters, and the galaxy, in all its pride and arrogance, was now the prey. The Endeavor's message had been received by the galaxy with a mixture of fear and defiance, but one thing was undeniable. Humanity had returned, and with them came a power no one had anticipated. The factions of the galaxy, once secure in their dominance, now found themselves at a loss. The Rylith Dominion, the Orc hegemony, the Veltraxi Confederacy, and even the Nexians all scrambled to understand the new threat and how to counteract it. Yet no amount of military might or intellectual prowess could bring them closer to grasping the scale of what humanity had become. In the void of space, the Endeavor remained a silent giant, watching and waiting. The human battleship's mere presence disrupted the balance of power. It was not just a symbol of humanity's return. It was a statement that the galaxy would no longer operate under the old rules. It was a reminder that even the greatest of civilizations could be brought low by their own complacency, while the ones they had cast aside had quietly endured and risen again. The Endeavor began to demonstrate the full extent of its technological superiority. No longer content with simply defending itself, it launched a series of calculated strikes that sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Entire fleets that attempted to engage were swiftly neutralized with devastating precision. The Endeavor's energy pulses rendered shields ineffective, weapon systems useless, and enemy vessels immobile within moments of contact. The alien warships, advanced in their own right, had no answer for the mysterious force that seemed to emanate from the human ship. It wasn't just the technology, it was the way it was applied. The Endeavor fought with a level of strategic brilliance that no one had seen before, anticipating moves before they were made, outthinking its opponents at every turn. This wasn't a show of brute strength. It was a demonstration of unmatched military strategy and technological innovation. Each strike, each calculated move, sent a clear message. Humanity had not only returned, they had evolved into something far more dangerous than the galaxy had ever known. The Rylith Dominion, who had been the first to send their fleet to confront the Endeavor, were now reeling. They had underestimated the humans, believing them to be an ancient race with outdated technology and long-lost knowledge. But the Endeavor was a masterpiece of design, blending ancient human ingenuity with new, untested technologies that no one could comprehend. Their attempts to rally the galaxy against the humans faltered as it became clear that no fleet could face the might of the Endeavor head-on without facing utter destruction. In the midst of the galaxy's frantic response, the Endeavor made its move. It didn't simply engage in battle. It began to target strategic locations across the galaxy. The human ship attacked military installations, resource-rich planets, and communication hubs. With surgical precision, it crippled entire systems, reducing once feared fleets to scrap metal and disabling planets that had stood as the strongholds of their respective factions. The human ship moved faster than any other in the galaxy, striking without warning, retreating before counterattacks could be mounted. It was as if the Endeavor knew the galaxy's every move before it happened. Despite the chaos that ensued, the Endeavor's strikes were measured and purposeful. The humans weren't interested in total destruction. They were reshaping the galaxy, slowly and methodically. They weren't just asserting power. They were redefining what it meant to be a dominant force in the galaxy. The human battleship's strikes were a form of retribution, a reminder to the galaxy's powers that humanity had once ruled the stars, and now it was time to take back what had been lost. As the galaxy reeled, the alien powers began to question their survival. Every move they made to retaliate was thwarted, every strategy countered. They had assumed that their collective might could repel this unknown force, but they were quickly learning the harsh truth. Humanity had not returned as an underdog, but as a king, reclaiming its throne. And in the dark silence of space, the Endeavor continued to observe, awaiting the inevitable next move. The galaxy had been warned. Now it was only a matter of time before the rules of the stars were rewritten. The galaxy was teetering on the edge of a precipice, and the Endeavor stood as the looming force that would either tip it into chaos or reshape it entirely. As the powerful factions of the galaxy reeled from the human battleship's relentless strikes, the response from their leadership was a mix of desperation, fear, and defiance. The initial shock had worn off, but the reality had set in. Humanity was not here to negotiate, nor were they here to merely reclaim old territories. They were here to dominate, and the galaxy's leaders realized with dawning horror that their once invincible fleets were helpless in the face of this ancient force. Among the galaxy's powers, the Rylith Dominion, though bruised from their earlier encounter, was the first to come to terms with the gravity of the situation. They had never encountered an enemy so efficient, so precise, and so ruthless. But the Dominion was nothing if not resilient, and their pride wouldn't allow them to bow before a race they had long considered extinct. A council of their highest military and political leaders convened, with the survival of their empire hanging in the balance. After much debate, they agreed on a bold move, one that they hoped might level the playing field, or at least provide them with some chance to resist. The Rylith summoned their most trusted allies, forming an unprecedented coalition with the Veltraxi Confederacy, the Urak Hegemony, and the Nexian Collective, their ancient enemies and rivals. They knew that if humanity's endeavor was to be stopped, it would require every resource and every force available. Together, they combined their intelligence, military assets, and most advanced warships into a fleet that could rival the might of the Endeavor. It was an alliance born of necessity and fear, factions that had long been at odds with one another now united under a common cause: survival. The Nexians, with their superior artificial intelligence, were perhaps the most critical force in the coalition. They had observed the human ship's tactics closely, analyzing its technology and methods of warfare, hoping to find a weakness. However, what they discovered was deeply unsettling. The Endeavor had been designed with an intelligence far beyond what any of the galaxy's factions had ever seen. Its systems were adaptive, constantly evolving in response to external threats. The more the Nexians studied it, the more they realized that humanity had transcended the limitations that the galaxy's powers had assumed would be their downfall. The ship seemed to anticipate every move made against it, countering with an efficiency that bordered on the uncanny. Despite their growing apprehension, the coalition decided to strike. The Allied fleets gathered in the darkest recesses of the galaxy, near a distant star system, where they hoped to surprise the Endeavor. They had learned that the human ship was never in a hurry, always moving with methodical precision, and they aimed to catch it off guard. The Joint Fleet's plan was simple: ambush the Endeavor, disable its power systems, and force it to surrender before its weapons could react. The fleet moved into position, hundreds of ships silently slipping through the void, preparing for the confrontation. The moment of truth had arrived. The combined forces felt a sense of grim determination as they initiated their attack, unleashing a wave of energy-based weaponry that was meant to overwhelm the Endeavor's defenses. But the ambush, as carefully planned as it was doomed from the start. As the first salvo of firepower reached the Endeavor, the human ship didn't respond in the way the Coalition had expected. Instead of retaliating immediately, the Endeavor released a pulse of energy that washed over the entire fleet, neutralizing their shields, scrambling their weapons, and disrupting all forms of communication. The shock was instant. The vast armada was frozen in place, helpless before the human ship, which appeared untouched by the assault. The humans didn't need to fire a shot to prove their dominance. They didn't need to engage in full-scale warfare. The Endeavor had deployed a force field so powerful and precise that it absorbed the entire offensive without breaking a sweat. The Coalition fleets found themselves completely immobilized, their systems offline, and their weapons useless. The Endeavor's artificial intelligence seemed to have anticipated the move before it even began. And then, as the Coalition fleet struggled to regain control, the Endeavor issued another chilling message, transmitted across all channels. Your resistance is futile. You will either submit or you will perish. There is no other option. The combined fleet had thrown everything it had at the Endeavor, and in response, the human ship had turned their might into a mere inconvenience. No one could deny it now. Humanity was no longer a relic of the past. They had returned, and they were unstoppable. The galaxy's once proud powers now faced a cruel truth. Their alliance had failed, and the specter of humanity's resurgence hung over them all. For the first time, they began to realize that their greatest enemy was not a weapon or a ship, but the relentless will of a species that had learned from its mistakes and was determined to rule the stars once again. In the aftermath of the failed assault, the galaxy's once proud empires reeled from the overwhelming display of power by the Endeavor. The Coalition fleet, reduced to a huddled mess of powerless ships, could only watch helplessly as the human ship loomed over them, its silent presence a constant reminder of their own fragility. No force in the galaxy had been able to withstand humanity's resurgence, and every strategy they had employed to counter the Endeavor had failed. It was as though the human ship knew their every move before they made it, a terrifying advantage that no one could even begin to comprehend. The Rylith Dominion, the Veltraxi Confederacy, the Urak Hegemony, and even the Nexians, the galaxy's most formidable powers, had been humbled. Their combined fleets had been rendered obsolete by a single human ship. They had no idea how humanity had attained such power, nor how to stop it. For the first time in millennia, they found themselves united not by ambition or conquest, but by fear. The galaxy's balance of power had irrevocably shifted. The Endeavor had proven that humanity no longer needed to fight with brute force. Instead, it fought with intelligence, precision, and an unmatched ability to adapt. The old ways of war, where strength and numbers ruled, no longer applied. Humanity had redefined the nature of conflict, and the galaxy's empires were left to pick up the pieces. In the dark void of space, the Endeavor remained a silent sentinel, waiting. It was no longer just a ship. It was a symbol of humanity's return, and the galaxy now understood that it wasn't just an isolated relic of a forgotten age. It was a harbinger of a new era, one where humanity would once again hold dominion over the stars. The galaxy's leaders, who had once taken their supremacy for granted, now understood that they were at the mercy of a species that had risen from nothing to claim its place at the top of the cosmic hierarchy. Despite the crushing defeat, the Coalition refused to bow to the humans. The Urak Hegemony, led by their most fanatical generals, swore vengeance against the humans. They rallied their remaining forces, ready to fight until the last ship was destroyed. The Rylith Dominion, though severely shaken, began to rally their forces for a final, desperate counterattack. The Veltraxi Confederacy, always more inclined toward diplomacy, sought to open a dialogue, hoping that humanity could be reasoned with before the situation escalated into full-scale war. But the message from the Endeavor was clear. There would be no negotiation, no compromise. The time for peace had passed. Meanwhile, the Nexians, ever the pragmatists, sought to understand the nature of humanity's resurgence. They poured every resource they had into studying the endeavor, desperate to uncover any hint of how the humans had unlocked such unprecedented power. The Nexians understood one thing above all else: they could not afford to remain passive in the face of this new threat. If they were to survive, they would have to find a way to level the playing field, to discover a weakness that could be exploited. The galaxy's once unshakable empires now found themselves scrambling for answers. Their most advanced minds were engaged in frantic research, hoping to uncover anything that could give them the upper hand. But with each passing day, it became more and more apparent. Humanity had not only returned, but had surpassed everything the galaxy had known. The balance of power had irreversibly shifted, and the question that lingered in the minds of every ruler, general, and strategist across the stars was simple: how could they possibly hope to stop the humans now? The galaxy's fate now rested on one thing: the resolve of its powers to either find a way to defeat the endeavor or to accept the inevitable truth that humanity had come to stay. And as the cold void stretched out before them, with no answers in sight, it became increasingly clear that there were no easy choices left to make. The galaxy had entered a new age, one where humanity's dominance was no longer a distant memory. It was a living, breathing reality, and the rest of the galaxy had to adapt or perish. As the galaxy descended into turmoil, the Endeavor continued its quiet watch over the fractured powers of the stars. Its silence was not one of patience alone. It was the calm before a storm that was slowly but surely reshaping the cosmos. The message had been clear, yet the galaxy's leaders had failed to heed it. Humanity was no longer a dying race. They had come back, stronger than ever, and they had returned with a singular goal: to reclaim what had once been theirs. The empires of the galaxy, once so sure of their place at the top of the cosmic order, were now crippled by their own arrogance. For centuries, they had ignored humanity's history, dismissing it as the folly of a primitive species that had long since fallen. But the Endeavor was no relic, no broken ship left to rust. It was a symbol of humanity's resilience, their ability to learn from the past and adapt, to evolve into something far beyond the rest of the galaxy's inhabitants. And now that adaptability had transformed into a terrifying advantage. The coalition of the Rylith, Veltraxi, Urak, and Nexians had failed to retaliate in any meaningful way. Each attempt at resistance had been crushed beneath the weight of the Endeavor's technology, which operated not just on raw power, but on an intelligence so advanced that it bent the very fabric of war itself. The factions of the galaxy, though once proud, now stood at the mercy of a species they thought they had outlasted. In this moment of fear and uncertainty, one voice rose above the others: the human leader aboard the Endeavor. Humanity's new ruler had not yet fully revealed their identity, but their intentions were clear. Their message resonated throughout the galaxy once again, this time not as a warning, but as a declaration. The time for your rule has passed. You will either join us, or you will be swept aside. This is your final opportunity to accept the new order. Do not resist us any longer, for your resistance is futile. It was not a demand. It was a prophecy. The galaxy's leaders convened in secrecy, knowing that their options were running out. In the face of overwhelming power and technological superiority, they saw two choices before them. They could continue their fight, facing an enemy they could not comprehend, or they could surrender and adapt to this new terrifying reality. Among them, the voice of the Veltraxi Confederacy spoke first, an old and wise leader, one who had always been pragmatic. They had seen firsthand the futility of resistance. Perhaps the time had come to accept that the galaxy would not belong to them anymore. "Let us negotiate," the leader suggested, a plan beginning to form. "If humanity has returned, they have come with purpose, but we must find out what that purpose is. We cannot afford another conflict. The Endeavor's power is not just military, it is transformative. Let us not be swept away by pride." Yet not all were so eager to accept their fate. The Rylith Dominion, proud and resolute, swore they would never bow to the humans. They would find a way, no matter the cost, to fight back. To surrender is to admit defeat, their High General declared. We will not let them rewrite the stars. But the looming reality was undeniable. Despite their best efforts, no faction had managed to land a blow on the endeavor that mattered. Their ships, their fleets, their alliances, everything they had built and fought for over millennia had been undone in mere moments. Humanity's return had turned their world upside down, and now they were left to reckon with the truth. They could either bend to humanity's will or be left in the dust. The Nexians, always cold and calculating, had begun to reach the same conclusion. Their logical minds understood that resistance was only prolonging the inevitable. The galaxy's powers could not withstand a species that had reclaimed its place at the top so effortlessly. But as they pondered, they understood something deeper. Humanity was not just a threat to be eliminated. It was an opportunity for new beginnings, a chance to forge a different path through the stars. In the dark void of space, the Endeavor waited. The fate of the galaxy rested on a knife's edge as the empires deliberated over their survival. Whether through submission, negotiation, or another unknown strategy, the reality was clear. Humanity had once again ascended to power, and the galaxy would never be the same. The galaxy's powers would either learn to live in this new era or be swept away entirely. The dawn of humanity's return had arrived, and with it, a new order was being born.